establish a quorum.
At this time, I'm only asking those TAC members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. Alternates, please also state your name if you are attending on behalf of a TAC representative. Jim Bell,
Here.
Naresh Machavaarapu,
Here.
William Lady,
Here.
Jason Kaufman,
Here.
Denise Malone,
Here.
Jamie Brown, Terrence Bailey, Alex Hansen,
Here.
Kenny Wilson,
Here.
Brittany Jameson,
Kara McIntosh in for Brittany.
Brian Davis,
Jeff Gagnon, present for Brian Davis.
Christopher Walker,
Here.
Gary Dunmeyer,
Here.
Joyce Kai,
Here.
Lorraine Cargill,
Here.
George Dezama,
Here.
Kim Delaney.
Here.
Felipe LaFaso,
Here.
Christopher Marsh,
Here.
Giuseppe Van Ord, Natalie Crowley,
Here.
Mo Alturk,
Melissa Acker for Mo Alturk.
Jessica Keller, Zaytek Marin.
Leslie Navarre for Zaytek Marin.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Right. Staff, are there any modifications to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. So seeing no changes, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you. I think I need a second and a motion or and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, moving on. Item 1C, motion to approve. I have the minutes for February 4th that require action. Are there any changes to the minutes? Anybody? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Denise, second.
Second.
Was that Jeff?
That's Jim.
Jim, all right, second by Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Item 1D, general public comments and public comments on the agenda. Instructions on how to provide public comments are included in the agenda. Staff, have any comments been received?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, 1E, comments from the chair and member comments. Do any members have any comments for the meeting? Any comments out there in the neither world?
No, Madam Chair.
I just want to compliment staff and all of their hard work in working in conjunction with the Broward MPO on the Safe Road Summit. I had the opportunity to attend, and I know that many members here around the table also attended, and I know how much work goes into those events, and I thought it was a wonderful event, very successful. It was really nice to see all of the good work that is being done in the Tri-County area. And even though we weren't the host county, I know that the staff here at the MPO put in a lot of time to work and assist. So just kudos to all of the collaboration going on between all the MPOs, and kudos to a successful event. All right, moving on to 1F is the TAC liaison report. So at this time, I'd like to invite Nathan George, the principal multimodal planner, to provide an update.
We're rolling with the punches. Good morning, everybody. And first, on behalf of staff, thank you, Natalie, for the acknowledgement. We appreciate that. It was a labor of love to help Broward MPO put on the Safe Road Summit. All right, we just have a handful of items to update you all on. First, I want to wish you all a happy Florida Bicycle Month. That is the entire month of March. We are looking forward to sharing a recap next month of everybody's participation, but want to encourage everybody to complete your proclamations and celebrate Florida Bicycle Month with us. And you can find more details on our Walk Bike page. Tomorrow, after VSAC, we'll be hosting a helmet fitter training. This is a requirement if you are going to go through the Florida Resource Center to get free helmets or at no cost to you helmets. So if anybody's interested in doing helmet fitting or helmet giveaway events in your communities, I encourage you to come and participate so you can get your staff certified. That allows you to secure those resources for your events. And then they have a number of other resources, so I encourage you to take advantage of that as well. We will be hosting our Florida Bicycle Month ride next Friday. It's going to be from 9 to 10 a.m. starting here at the office. We have a nice route selected south of downtown. Should be able to show you some new facilities, ride on some shared streets. It should be a really fun event, so I encourage everybody to participate. You can register, search ride on our page. Encourage you all to come and join us and celebrate with the MPO next week. All right, we have a couple of events upcoming, so I want to provide you some details on those. First is a Safe Routes to School workshop that we'll be hosting on April 3rd. This is going to be paired with some of our field work and research for our Safe Routes work deliverable that we're working on. So April 3rd, 9:30 to 12, search SRTS workshop, and please do register, come and join us for that and learn more about Safe Routes work here in Palm Beach County. We'll be hosting a Boca Raton TOD mobility tour on April 22nd between 2 and 3:30. Search Boca TOD tour to get more details and register for that and learn more about TOD transit-oriented communities in downtown Boca Raton around Meisner Park. We'll be hosting a transit-oriented communities workshop on April 30th between 9:30 and 12. So want to certainly get everybody, this is a follow-on to activities that were completed last year. So search TOC workshop and come out and learn more about our TOC planning efforts. Then a couple of final details. There's an autonomous vehicles conference on May 29th. This will be hosted in Boca Raton at the Innovation Campus. So you can go to autonomousvehiclesconference.com to get more details and sign up for that event, learn more. Two reminders of ongoing efforts in the county and state that we want to make sure everybody is stays attuned to those. The 2026 Strategic Highway Safety Plan update is currently in process. You can learn more details at FDOT's website, and then also the countywide transportation master plan that's being developed by Palm Beach County. Be sure to keep an eye out for details. They do have events upcoming, so stay attuned to that. And as always, feel free to go to our website, search participate to find more ways to stay involved with the MPO. And that concludes the update. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. Do any committee members have any questions on the liaison report? I do have a quick question. The bicycle fitting training tomorrow, I know that you all have a few sessions planned for like maybe in the next coming year, and it would just be a request if there could be maybe something located in the North County. Maybe Jupiter might like to use that opportunity. I would love to have a couple other staff members trained, because at this point in time, Joanne Scaria, who's on our Vision Zero committee, she's the only one. And whenever we do the pop-up gardens, she's very overwhelmed with the responsibility of the helmet fitting. And for those who aren't aware of this program, it's an amazing program. We've done a ton of helmet giveaways at our events. I think it's through UF where it's the helmet giveaways where you get the helmets. I think I'm pretty sure that's where you receive it, but we've had the chance to receive hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of free bicycle helmets to give away, but you do have to have that training. So it would just be a request for consideration. You don't have to respond now, but if there is an opportunity in the future to host it, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll be sure to discuss that with staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Nathan, rumor has it for the bike ride on March 13th, it might be eligible for AICP credits. Is that true?
I'm working with the APA Florida Treasure Coast section to see if we can get CM. So I have a discussion with our folks this afternoon to confirm that that's the approach we're going to take. But yes, the plan is to pursue certification maintenance for anybody with an AICP for that bike ride. It would presumably be certified for 1 hour of CM. And we're pursuing that with the other workshops as well. So the TOC, the Safe Routes to School, all of those we're looking to certify for our AICP members. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other committee comments? All right, we're moving on. We're up on action items. So we have item 2A. This is a motion to recommend adoption for the fiscal 2027-2028 Unified Planning Work Program. At this time, I'd like to invite Andrew Euler, the Deputy Director of Programs, to provide an update.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So this is the second reading and the final reading for action today of the Unified Plan and Work Program for the upcoming fiscal year 2027 to 2028. There wasn't many changes when it came to the actual document. It was some visual changes with colors and some formatting. No major changes took place during the last reading last month. And what this is it's one of our core products. Every metropolitan planning organization throughout the nation is required to have these 4 products: the long-range transportation plan, which is our 25-year vision, the transportation improvement program, which is the current funding of 5 years of transportation products with federal and state funds, the public participation plan that oversees how we engage with the public, and then the Unified Plan and Work Program, which is what we're discussing today. And so this is the 2-year operational plan and budget that follows the state fiscal year starting July 1st of this year, and will go for fiscal year 2027 and then to 2028. And so that will end on June 30th of 2028. And what it really is it's our official sort of activities as an agency and what we're going to accomplish over the next 2 years when it comes to planning activities. So it really outlines who's going to do that work, whether that's staff or consultants or other partner agencies. What are those going to be? What are specifically what the deliverables are going to be, the completion dates, and then how much, what's the budget and funding source. For our agency and most MPOs, the majority of our funds come from the federal government. So they're surface transportation funds. They go through the federal transportation bill. And the way it works is we have this operational plan. It gets approved by AFDOT. It gets approved by Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. And they give us a go-ahead to start doing those activities and then seeking reimbursement of those. So we submit monthly to AFDOT and FHWA to seek reimbursement of those federal funds. There are 6 core tasks. We've consolidated down from 9 tasks in our current UPWP. Those are engage and collaborate. So this is a combination that includes our outreach to the community when it comes to public participation. It's also when we go and have presentations and workshops in the public or with our stakeholders. It also includes the collaboration aspect, which is putting on these committees, our governing board, and then any other committees and boards we have. Then there's short range planning, which is accomplishing many of those shorter range planning activities of corridor studies, maybe a local mobility plan with our jurisdictions. And it goes all the way from that to the prioritization of projects within our transportation improvement program. So it's creating that document, it's putting together our list of priority projects, and it's getting those implemented. Then we have task 3, the long range plan. And this is all those 25-year planning horizon planning we would do. So this incorporates the long range transportation plan. At this point, it's more of a maintenance and in doing the amendments, but it's also looking towards the next long range transportation plan. So we just adopted our last one at the end of 2024. So the next one is due in 2029. So you won't see too much activity, the full gambit within this Unified Plan and Work Program, but we are starting on those deliverables early with population and employment projections and allocations. And we're also looking at some more digital twin and scenario planning modeling and how it can be fit into some of our tasks moving forward. We then have the administer the agency, which is the day-to-day tasks, building facilities, all of our personnel, legal certifications, but we really needed to carry out the federally and state administered MPO process. We then have regional coordination with our partners, and that's mostly with Southeast Florida Transportation Council. So that's Broward MPO and the Palm Beach, the Miami-Dade TPO. And together we do have a regional transportation plan. We take turns administering that plan and overseeing SEFTEC, Southeast Florida Transportation Council. And so next go around, it's currently held by Miami-Dade. Palm Beach is going to be the one to oversee that. So we are the ones administering the next regional transportation plan. And a lot of that work will be kicking off in the second year of this UPWP, so fiscal year 28. And then lastly, we have agencies expenditures with local funds. And so these are the funds that come from local dues, 10 cents per capita for our member agencies. And those go towards non-reimbursable expenses for the federal government. So a lot of that goes with certain marketing, and it goes towards maybe training for governing board members or some other types of travel and coordination that aren't reimbursable. Here's a breakdown of revenue sources for both fiscal year 27 and 28. It's about $4.5 million a year. And as I mentioned, the majority of these are the federal funds that we seek reimbursement for. And so the main funding sources there are the Consolidated Planning Grant of both federal highway and federal transit plans. It's called CPG. And then the Federal Highway Surface Transportation Funds we have. Both of those are formula-based. So it's based off population in our urban area that we receive. And those are the main funding sources. After that, we have smaller amounts of funding sources. One comes from the state, and that's the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage. So the Palm Beach MPO serves as the local coordinating board for Palm Tran. So the Transportation Disadvantage Services, so they're paratransit, they meet 4 times a year, and we help administer that in the review of the TD activities. Then there's that local funds, which is 10 cents per capita towards non-federal reimbursements. So that's about $160,000 a year. And then not listed, which is important to mention, all the federal funds do require a local match. The way we do it here in the state of Florida is through a soft match using toll revenue credits. So the state of Florida with the Turnpike and other toll revenues spends a lot on the federal national highway system already. And so they're able to use that as like a statewide match. And so when you look at Palm Tran for local matches, all of our planning activities, and all the ones that we have through our member agencies, if you received a transportation alternatives project through us, those don't require a hard local match. That's all soft match at the state level. So unique to a few states. Here's a summary pie chart of the 2-year expenditures by task. So this is a combination of both years, 27 and 28. You see the breakdown by activities. Some of those larger ones, engage and collaborate, short range planning, because it encompasses a lot of the studies, the transportation improvement program, the list of priority products, and getting those implemented, and then administrative agency. This is the same data, but broken down by who's accomplishing the task. And so more of those categories of personnel, consultant, and then travel, direct expenses, supplies, and equipment. And what you'll see is the personnel and consultant is mostly in the more of those planning activities and then engagement and collaboration. And then when it comes to travel, direct expenses, supplies, and equipment, those all fall under the administrative agency. Those are all wrapped up within that task. So timeline to adoption and how this works out is this is our second reading, presenting to you all for final recommendation. Then it goes to the governing board. We then provide it to FHWA, FTA, and FDOT. And then once they approve it, we can start operating under this new Unified Planning Work Program come July 1st. It's out for public review now. That's going to go all the way until the governing board meeting this month. And that's all I have for you. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Board members, are there any comments, questions? Couple board members did join. I don't know if you caught that, Ruth.
I did, thank you.
Jessica and Jane. Great. Okay. Looks like there are no questions. And I know we had the opportunity to review this as a draft and discuss it as a board last meeting as well. So at this time, may I please have a motion for approval on this item?
So moved.
Motion by Christopher. Is there a second?
Second.
Second,
Chris.
Chris, thanks. Sorry, Chris. Second by Chris, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Unanimously. Thank you very much. Great job. All right, that was the only action item. So we're already on to informational items. Item 3A is the pedestrian, bicycle, and micromobility safety study. So at this time, I would like to invite Nathan George, Principal Multimodal Planner, to present this item.
Good morning, everybody. Want to say it's safe to say that safety, transportation safety is embedded into the DNA here at the MPO. And I'm here today to talk to you about the 2026 Pedestrian, Bicyclist, and Micromobility Safety Study. And again, my name is Nathan George. You might be thinking to yourself, don't we already have a safety plan that matches this name? And we do. We have a 2017 study. So we're here today to talk to you about the 2026 update. We are changing it slightly, so I'll walk you through that. But the 2017 study followed a similar approach, identified the top 10 corridors and intersections around the county where we're experiencing the greatest safety challenges for these users, pedestrians and bicyclists. This plan is supportive of our Vision Zero action plan, and it's also, the update is an item in our strategic plan. So this is something we're trying to complete this fiscal year. Goal 2B of that plan. So this is where those strategic plans come into action. Why is it important that we're updating this plan? Well, trends change. So we are continuing to see an increase in the number of pedestrians and bicyclists that experience traffic crashes. Those numbers on total are increasing over time and have increased since the 2017 study was completed. Fortunately, we're not seeing a huge uptick in the fatal and severe injuries. So that is the only positive that I'm here to share in that regard today. But it is something that is continuing to be very important, that, you know, when these folks are impacted by crashes, there is a higher likelihood that they will experience a fatal or severe injury. And so the continued attention, how do we address these challenges? How do we improve travel conditions for anybody who's not in a car, is why we're completing this study today. So our approach to update this plan, today is the introduction. We'll be back later to tell you the final outcome. The first major change is that we're incorporating the micromobility, people who are moving around on e-mobility, scooters, e-bikes, different vehicles. That's really changing the dynamic since the 2017 study was completed, just the amount of those vehicles that are out and how much that may be influencing our overall crash trends. So that's something we're going to explore and provide some recommendations. There's also legislation in this area, so we're going to continue to see evolution around the topic of micromobility. And a future study will have to incorporate those lessons learned. Similar to the prior study, we're reevaluating the top 10. So we'll establish a new top 10 corridors and intersections as part of the study. I'll show you those in a moment. We will be recommending safety improvements consistent with what we did last time, and we'll be focused on delivering an implementation-focused deliverable, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So our current status, we started this process back in December, and we're here today to update you, and we're in the middle of things. So one of our initial tasks that we assigned to our consultant was review the 2017 study. What were our successes? What worked really well? We've got examples like Lake Worth Road on the image there on the right, where we have improved conditions for walking and biking in that corridor, and we want to highlight and emphasize what's working. I think we will see some opportunities to maybe capture some of the work that's been completed around the region that wasn't incorporated in the prior report. So there should be some good opportunities to maybe have takeaways from those 2017 recommendations and what did we not recommend that was completed. We know that of the corridors that were in the study, 13 received safety-related improvements, but 5 received directly related improvements to the study. So I'd like to see that number be higher when we come back with a future study. More of a one-to-one correlation would be the ideal. We're currently screening the top 20 corridors and intersections. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to review any overlap with either recently completed or upcoming CIP and TIP projects. We want to make sure that we're not studying something where maybe it's already been improved. So we wouldn't want to focus our attention there, or where conditions will be improved, or potentially the data may be misaligned and drawing our attention to something that has been improved. So here's a map. We'll be sharing these results with you all, so I don't expect you to have a major takeaway today from this, but it's a map of where we've seen the top 20 intersections and corridors around the region. You might be looking at the map and saying, I don't see my neighborhood or my community represented, and if so, congratulations, that's great news. But this was completed at a countywide level, so we have data for all of your communities, what the conditions were. The evaluation we conducted is consistent with our high injury network identification, or our HIN screening. So we do have values for everybody's communities. These are the places where conditions were the worst. This is where people are severely injured or are being killed around the county, primarily mid-county, a little bit of South County, but primarily we're seeing the issue in that central county. And then conditions are a little bit better in other places, but that doesn't mean we don't have data for it. It just means this data-driven process is directing our attention here. And our next step is, like I said, we've got 20 locations that we're screening right now. We may include some of the 11, 12, 13, some of those areas might find their way into the study just based on overlap with recent or upcoming projects. Once we know that for sure, we'll start honing in on what are the actual safety challenges in those corridors, what are some of the recommendations that this study can make and hopefully affect change. We will be back to update communities in May, so you will hear from us what are the results of those specific areas. Once we drill down to the top 10, what are we recommending in those places? We'll be working to finalize this study in June. And as I mentioned, the focus is implementation. So we want to make sure that this plan, like the prior one, informs future programming, future work. So there are a number of ways that the plan might find its way into action. We'll certainly be consulting affected communities once we've completed the study, conducting walk and bike audits as a potential outcome, or corridor studies if we go through a planning exercise. And then projects sometimes find their way through the TIP cycle. We might see a resurfacing that we can program improvements into. We're continually looking to integrate safety into every opportunity that project crosses our desk. So that concludes my presentation. As I said, we'll be back in a couple of months to give you an update, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Committee members, comments, Kim.
Thanks. So great presentation, Nathan. And I appreciate that Lake Worth Road is illustrated as one of the unusual examples. So if you pull up that picture again of Lake Worth Road, that would be helpful. The Lake Worth Road corridor is a corridor that historically had one of the highest ratings for safety challenges, with lots of transit dependent bike walk activity because of a lack of access to vehicles. I mean, there's a whole series of factors that really positioned Lake Worth Road as a road that really needed a special level of attention. DOT, I think in its first project in Palm Beach County anyway, put in that protected bike lane. So if those of you who are familiar with that corridor, it's a whole lot different now. There's a lot of drivers that are really angry because they keep hitting those barriers because they're going too fast. So the barriers are the problem on the road now, not the speeding of the drivers, right? So that's just interesting to kind of react to. But I think from a safety standpoint, if I'm correct, I think the number of KSI incidents has been reduced drastically. So as part of this study, the reason I asked that question, and we talk a lot about more aggressive interventions as a TAC and as a county to try to think about how to balance the conditions. It would be great as part of this study if the MPO could really kind of dive into what's happening there, like the pre-post conditions. What's the average rate of speed? What kind of crashes are happening for vehicles? What's happening with pedestrians and bicyclists? Do we have more behavior out there now as a result because now it's safer? So I just ask that as part of this, since you're already underway and looking at these factors. And I think that's the only protected bike lane we have on a state road. I know we have other protected bike lanes on city roads, maybe. I know it's West Palm maybe has some protected bike lanes. Lions Road is a protected bike lane. So that would just be really interesting to see. And I emphasize that because in this group, we've really had an evolution in our expectations from initially, can't we just please get a bike lane on some of these roads, though it's exposed and it's a 45 plus road and people are going 55, to that's not okay. If we're going to have bicycle facilities on a road that's 45 or greater, they're going to be either protected or grade separated path, because that's the only safe place to be. But I don't really think we have I think we have a great opportunity as a county to really add to the body of knowledge about what happens in terms of the metrics that are associated with those facilities, because they feel like they're safer, but it would be great, again, through this effort, since you're already underway with it, selfishly asking if you could generate the data also to go along with that. Man, that would help me when I'm out there trying to explain what's the value of a protected bike lane or a multi-use path, to actually have the value of lives saved, crashes reduced, better conditions. So I just throw that out there as a request. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim, for the insights, if you will. I will say that I don't know that we'll get to the level of detail that you're talking about, because it does require some study. Fortunately, because of some of the tension that you're referring to, FDOT's conducted some post-implementation research. So we know things like user preference. We know that a lot of our users in the center portion of that recently completed project that's on the screen, they prefer to use the roadside facility, the side path that's on the south side of the road, or the sidewalk that's on the north side of the road, and they don't ride in the street. As they're getting to the termination points of the project where they have to go back into existing conditions, the bike lanes that are on the street, they then tend to get back into, or we're seeing higher volumes in the bike lanes that are separated by the curb barriers. So we have that observational data based on some FDOT counts. They did video counts and we were able to look at users in that case. I think the biggest challenge we'll have is just the data availability. We didn't ask our consultants to collect counts or anything like that. So to the degree that we can take insights from crash data or observational, anything that we can share, we'll be happy to do that. Absolutely.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Melissa.
Hey, Nathan, you can hear me good. I'm Melissa Ackert, Palm Beach County. I'm grateful that you guys are looking at the micromobility aspect of it. Our SS4A action plan struggled with this part of it because the crash history doesn't really document it well. It doesn't differentiate bikes and pedestrians and who's using micromobility. So that is a challenge you're probably getting into now. So I had a question about how you guys are able to differentiate those types of crashes.
Thanks, Melissa. So this is an issue that the state is looking at right now. There's currently proposed legislation to require police departments to capture data related to when a micromobility crash occurs, and there would be a sunset period for this provision. But one of the challenges before that's enacted is, where do you actually capture details about a crash related to a micromobility device? Fortunately, because I was away from the MPO for a little while working with a municipality, I got to see firsthand how how we're tracking that information currently. And what I found is that in police reports, they are embedding the data in the crash description. So if you want to know if a crash involved a micromobility user, typically the crash description will include some kind of a make and model description, or they will just say very simply it was an e-bike or an e-scooter or whatever device the person was using. It requires a much more manual effort to go through crash descriptions, because unfortunately the Signal 4 platform doesn't include crash descriptions in their attribute fields, so you have to pull reports. So it's more of a manual effort. I was fortunate in Boca that we received our crash reports directly from PD. So I'd say in your communities, if you have a police department or a police liaison who can share those bike and ped crash reports, that's the fastest way to get the data, as opposed to waiting for Signal 4. But it is a challenge to try and figure out where are these problems from crash data. And we'll focus more initially on the policy side. So what are some of the policy considerations, broader recommendations? I don't know that it's going to get, drill down into the crashes themselves. And my personal anecdote from that experience of, reviewing crash reports and trying to make pointed recommendations is that micromobility takes these issues where this study is looking at concentrated challenges. So our corridors and intersections is the top 10. Where do we experience those challenges in a place where there's a lot of activity happening? Now people are riding longer distances. It creates a challenge that crashes might be occurring away from the hotspots, or people who weren't riding are now able to ride. So I actually think that micromobility is going to make the challenge a little bit harder to address. The issues that I would see in crash reports were things like a person on an e-scooter or an e-bike was riding on a sidewalk and ran into the side of a car that was turning into a driveway or turning at an intersection. So issues that we typically would have seen somebody being hit on a bicycle, now the bicyclist is running into the car. That's going to be a particularly challenging issue to resolve. It's going to, hopefully it influences our design approach. How do we design our intersections and driveways? But I think initially we'll have to focus on the policy recommendations, and to the degree that we can, we'll try and draw from crash data.
I have another question
Sure.
related to it. I just was wondering, because I remember Terrence brought this up in a meeting a while back about the legislation and where things are heading. Is that going to be a part of what you guys are summarizing is the status of those initiatives at the state level?
Yeah, I think all we can do right now is we can document where the legislature's at once they close session, because we'll be closing out this report in June. The reporting that I've seen is that this some of the issues may go to special session, or there in the case of micromobility, they're proposing to stand up a steering committee that would make a report later this year, like September, October. So some legislation we'll know at the time that we complete this document, but there's potentially some additional legislation that will come in the next session or out of that steering committee's work.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Right, Alex.
Yeah, last year I attended the National Conference of the American Planning Association, and one of the highlights for me of that conference was a session on bicycle and pedestrian safety that was led by a professor of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Robert Schneider. I have to look him up now. I strongly suggest that you guys and your consultants take a look at his work. He has reviewed data from dozens and dozens of communities throughout the country. And he has all these different recommendations, policy recommendations, things that have worked, that haven't worked throughout the US from a bicycle and pedestrian safety. I thought it was at least the presentation that he did was excellent. And there were some very good policy recommendations. So I would recommend that if your consultants can take a look at his work. Again, Robert Schneider, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Thanks, Alex. I know Bob. He's a friend from TRB. So yeah, glad to take a look at his work. And there are some peers in the research community. I studied under Ralph Bueller at Virginia Tech. So we can definitely see if we can scan any other academic research and draw that into the study. Thanks.
Yes, as you're aware, the county's going through the countywide transportation master plan. And I was just wondering, I didn't see in their data section, they have some drafts out right now and they talk about data sources for various things. And obviously safety is one of their concerns. And I didn't see anything even mentioned about the 2017 study that you guys have. So my question is, are you at least planning to, because I know they're moving at a fast pace right now. There may be some slowdowns based on recent county commission meetings, but are you planning on providing some information to be incorporated into that effort? Because that would be great, because micromobility obviously is a new thing, as we've just talked about, and that's not mentioned in anything right now. That's just one aspect. And the corridors, the top 10 corridors, I mean, if just any of that information, whether it's the 2017 or hopefully at least a draft of updated information would be great to be incorporated into at least the data portion.
Yeah, I'd say we're working collaboratively with the county, just like we work collaboratively with all of your communities. So we have shared data with them. I don't know that we're in a position to influence their current process for something like a micromobility or the recommendations out of this study. I don't know if we could get it to them in a way that they could incorporate it. And we certainly couldn't force them to, but certainly we'll share information and continue that dialogue. As I mentioned during the liaison report, that's something we encourage everybody to participate in the development of that countywide transportation plan, and staff here are involved in that dialogue as well. So we'll be sure to share what we can, and hopefully they can incorporate whatever we provide into their process.
Chris?
Have you guys looked into local ordinances as it relates to the e-bikes and regulating speeds? And in your studies, are you seeing any accidents related to the e-bikes hitting pedestrians or other users of the walkways?
Yes, we have looked into local ordinances and made some connections for folks who were planning to adopt local ordinances, including most recently talking with Boynton Beach about the work they're considering. I'd say for anybody who's considering regulating micromobility, follow what's happening in Tallahassee right now, because that's part of their current proposal. Is one of the recommendations is to change state statute. So if anybody is riding an e-micromobility device, e-scooter or e-bike, that you reduce speed to 10 miles an hour in a shared facility when you're passing a pedestrian within, I think it's within 100 feet of a pedestrian. So there's potential for preemption in this area. We may see the legislature apply a more rigid standard than localities have. We have talked with a number of communities who have adopted their own regulations. And to your question about, have I seen any data about bicyclists or e-scooter riders hitting pedestrians? That's a very fringe issue. I haven't seen it personally in crash data. It's something that we looked at in Boca. So it's certainly of interest, especially because people need to slow down when we have that interaction between pedestrians and e-micromobility users. So it's something that we all need to be aware of, but hopefully the proposed legislation here in the state of Florida addresses that. And I have seen some trade organizations or interest groups saying that they're in agreement with what's been recommended in that legislative change. So that's positive. I think we're seeing at a national level, people are reviewing what's been proposed here in the state of Florida. And there are some folks who are saying, yeah, this is actually a good idea. It may become a model elsewhere around the country. So that was very positive. I want to say it was People for Bikes, but forget who exactly made that recommendation, but they just acknowledged what we're talking about here in Florida may become model legislation around the country. So that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lorraine?
Good morning.
Morning.
So with the amount of scooters and bikes we transport on the tri-rail trains, I would love for as many of these corridors that you're looking at to possibly be around tri-rail station areas, if possible. I don't recall the 20 corridors you're looking at right now, but I just thought I'd plug that.
Yeah, I'll put that back up.
It's important for our connections to our stations.
And I'm just noting what you said here.
It's hard for me to
So
decipher.
the one thing that I'll say is that the focus of this study is to say, here are the areas where we have the worst challenges. And if we see the overlap of folks being killed or severely injured around a tri-rail station, that would draw our attention there. A more focused planning study, how do we improve accessibility around our tri-rail stations, is something that I'm very passionate about. We need to make sure that people can easily, without a car, get into a transit system, which would be I will call it a complementary but separate effort. So I don't think we can take the data and attract it to tri-rail station areas, but certainly if we see them in our, outside of our top 10 and our top 20, we may be able to encourage those to be areas that we focus on.
Sure.
We'll take a look.
Great. Naresh?
I think one suggestion / request I have, as you know, county, they're in the process of developing their Vision Zero action plan, and several municipalities, we are working on developing our Vision Zero action plan. And pedestrian and bike safety is one of the big components of these plans. And the top 20 corridors and intersections we identify, they tend to change based on the number of years of the data we are evaluating. They tend to shift based on when we are looking at the analysis. So we want to make sure the study update is going to be capturing what we've been doing and our high injury network. I think our concern is if we are going to use this update as a criteria for future funding and applications as we put in, we want to make sure our local safety needs and HIN network is properly captured here, so that not having an intersection identified within our city, which is a good thing based on the years of the data you are evaluating, but it doesn't mean we don't have any locations out there that are high prone for pedestrian and bike safety. So we want to make sure, in addition to capturing the historical crash data, which is more reactive in nature, we are also capturing those proactive surrogate safety measures. For example, I will take Glades DDI and FAU interchange area is one of the good examples where we are seeing an increased in the activity for the number of students and faculty using e-bikes and e-scooters getting to FAU, and the corridor conditions are not safe, but it would take time for those conditions to get reflected in the historical crash data. So we don't want to miss an opportunity to give our input and what we think our community is notifying and what we are seeing locally as our safety needs, especially relates to pet bike safety.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. I'll say that first, the work that everybody around the region is doing through your SS4A or Vision Zero, if you're not doing SS4A, is fantastic. This is hopefully a companion to the work that everybody is doing. This is our regional assessment of where bicyclists and pedestrians are experiencing the greatest challenge. It doesn't carry more weight than your Vision Zero action plan. It's not something that we're doing to say we don't want to fund safety improvements around the region. This is really just a targeted look at these users and where they're experiencing the greatest challenges, so we can start to focus on addressing those identified needs through crash data. I'm really excited about what may come down the road as we review our HIN methodology. I think we can start looking for more risk-based identification where it's not so much based on crash outcomes, but we can start looking for where are we experiencing a lot of crashes that maybe we're just lucky. And in this time period you referred to, so the data on the screen, 2020 to 2024, 5 years of data. Maybe we didn't see those bad outcomes in that time frame. Maybe they were before or after. Maybe we've improved conditions and we won't see those continual challenges. But hopefully we can start to improve our data processing, the methodology we use to identify challenges, and start to see things that it's not based on crash outcomes. It's not based on where we're seeing a lot of activity and crashes, to your point. And hopefully that can guide some of our work in the future. So that's something I'm personally excited about. But for right now, it's literally just, here's what the data tells us. And so that's where we need to focus our attention currently in this specific area. And we 100% want to support the work that all of our localities are doing through your Vision Zero and SS4A. So continue to bring those local needs to the MPO.
Just one quick follow-up to that. We would welcome an opportunity before we finalize the study and come back in May for an update, get with, at least with the city, to go through the methodology and make sure we have an opportunity to provide what we've been noticing and some of our recommendations off of our Vision Zero action plan, just to compare notes before we come back and in May and present a final update to this study. We want to make sure our city needs are properly captured.
I'll take that to staff.
Thank you.
Alex.
Yeah, just a suggestion on terminology. I see the map says top 20 corridors and intersections. To me, and I think to a lot of people, if they hear top, that has a positive connotation, right? Top is the best, is better than others. In this case, we're talking about the ones with the most crashes, and right. So I would maybe even I assume later on they will be described that this is, but I will maybe it's the worst corridors. It's not the top. Or the ones with the highest number of crashes, or whatever the statistic is. I would just, again, from a terminology standpoint, if people just look at this map and read the headline, they will think that this is something good. So just a suggestion to consider for what terminologies use.
Yes, thank you for that recommendation. I also, in our methodology, I stopped using the term score because to me, score is like Frogger, how many points can I get, or Pac-Man, whatever. So thank you for the recommendation. We'll take that under consideration. It's consistent with the way the 2017 study was developed. If we can change that top and use a different term that's maybe not so positive associated, I would certainly welcome that.
Rating. Yeah. Any other comments from committee members? Just a couple quick comments myself. Just want to get the timing. You said May. Is this May for an update or May for final presentation, or at least some kind of draft format in terms of recommendations?
Correct. May will be an update. So we'll still be, in the pre-finalized part of the process. We want to give you an update of what are we seeing in what was selected as the top 10. We'll give you all of those details. It'll still be a process that we're working through to get a final document by June. So we're tied to the fiscal year.
June.
We want to make sure that June, the final deliverables completed. And then, like I said, we'll roll from that into implementation. So this should inform actions that come in the next fiscal year, but the document itself will be updating you on progress. It will be a pre-final material at that point. Hopefully input that you provide to us at that point can be incorporated into the final deliverable.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a quick time frame to be able to, go out, get your data, provide implementation. So, good luck. It seems like an excellent study, tons of overlap with so many things going on that we've talked about with the countywide transportation master plan. With the timeline that you're talking about, there probably is opportunity to at least share some of the potential outcomes. And of course, all the Vision Zero, any adopted mobility plans out there. And I would just encourage coordination on the jurisdictions with any affected municipalities, because they're the ones that know best. They might have that localized crash data. And I think it's, with a limited scope of 20 corridors, hopefully you're able to get some amazing recommendations that can feed into implementation in different forums. There's so many opportunities through this agency to be able to implement, or different jurisdictional plans that they can implement themselves. So I think it's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the wonderful dialogue today. Appreciate it.
All right, we're moving on to item 3B. This is a transit-oriented communities framework study. So at this time, I would like to invite Brian Ruscher, the Deputy Director of Multimodal, to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. Here to present item 3B. So thank you all for sitting through so many informational presentations, but we wanted to get some information in front of the committee, refresh you on some of the things that we've been working on, also give you kind of an outlook of where we're going, give you some updates on specifically transit-oriented communities, transit-oriented corridors today. What the heck are these terms and why aren't we just calling them TOD? Well, I think that, we laid out in our framework that we completed in 2025 as part of our strategic plan, we need to start thinking about land use along corridors and land use within communities, both of which are complementary to transit-oriented nature. So I think of downtown West Palm Beach as a very transit-rich environment. We have something like 17 bus routes going into the Intermodal Center. We have Tri-Rail, we have Greyhound, we have Amtrak, all going to that one location. We have Brightline downtown, we have Bright Bike downtown, and I would argue, and you'll see most of these pictures are actually in Palm Beach Gardens in the transitional slides. Downtown in the Gardens, and Gardens has an up and coming transit oriented environment. So this transit oriented community study that we completed looks at where we are at a county wide level with respect to our 561 corridor. So it takes into account all of our long range transportation plans, the future corridor analysis, and it lays the groundwork for what we need to do and start thinking about this year, which we have an ongoing task work order to do some additional follow-up and framing of transit-oriented in Palm Beach County. So we have this study, it's available online. The website's at the end of this presentation, so stay tuned for that. So let's talk about transit-oriented communities, corridors, so on and so forth. So corridors, think about our 561 network, Okeechobee Boulevard, Lake Worth Road, Congress, Military are big corridors that have thousands of people riding them a day. You know, we've been looking recently about the transit ridership in comparison to just the AADT. We have 50,000 people driving on some sections of US 1 when US 1 also carries, 5,000 transit riders. So while the common understanding of transit is that, oh, there's only 1% of people riding transit countywide, well, on some corridors, it's, 10, 20% of the people actually moving in the corridor is actually doing so by transit. So we do have a lot of transit-oriented corridors in the county. I mentioned before that there is also notions being floated around about transit-oriented communities on the national discourse. So you go to conferences like APA National, statewide, Railvolution, you hear about transit-oriented communities. So I think of like really great example I mentioned before is downtown West Palm Beach. All of these things have similarities in practice. There's mixes of uses. There's walkability, there's bikeability, there's electrified mobility as part of that conversation. More or less, you have non-auto options once you are in these places, whether it is a corridor, whether it is a transit-oriented development, whether it is a downtown environment, you have non-auto options once you are within that location. It's a mixture of capital investment and private investment typically that complements one another. Well, you get a good example of that is the transit site developing up and coming at the Intermodal Center, private investment and public investment coming together to ensure that there's transit oriented to support the people in that area. And then lastly, the urban design takes into account all of these things that I just mentioned, but makes a really pleasant environment and experience. Other key components, and you've seen some of these graphics, I just wanted to kind of reinforce that, we're continuing to think about mobility, transit, housing, parks, play, and this concept. Really wanted to drive home the concept that you should be able to walk within a 3/4 of a mile of your transit-oriented development around the transit station. But then generally speaking beyond that, if you're looking at it a corridor-wide perspective, you might have station areas with overlap between them. So you could have a very walkable transit-oriented corridor. And then if you extend it out using an electric bicycle or an e-micromobility device, you could go arguably 3 miles. Although when we talk to our counterparts in the Netherlands, they extend that actually to 6 miles, but that's 6 miles of low stress network. And I don't know if any 6 mile low stress connection anywhere in South Florida, except for maybe the East Coast Greenway in certain sections. So just wanted to reinforce that we are trying to connect communities and provide access to everyday destinations at these sites, at these communities and along these corridors. What the study framework that we looked at in Palm Beach County is we took the different land uses in Palm Beach County. We looked at context classification from the Florida Department of Transportation. We're trying to mold them together because if we are looking at land use and transportation independent of one another, we're going to end up with not the best decisions for the future of the area. So what we did is we blended together some of the transects from T1, T2, T3, T4, and T5 and T6 to try to better state that if you have a certain roadway and a certain land use combined, here's what you should shoot for in terms of your transit-oriented development types of development intensities, context classifications, and I'll just flip to the slide so I'm using the right terms. Your urban form, your complete streets, and your mobility hubs. These are your 3 main categories that we tried to develop that transect theory around with this study framework. So the urban form has to be right. You can make a really great high density location, but if you set buildings back 1,000 feet from the main street where your transit's located, no one's gonna walk to it. So making sure your urban form is really great, making sure you have complete streets so that the street itself is walkable. And then of course your mobility hubs, I mentioned some of those smaller services, Bright Bike. Some cities have electrified mobility fleets available to them. So these 3 main factors are the things that we looked at. We also had influencing factors. So your zoning and density obviously is important. Your land use diversity is important. Your urban and your street design, destination accessibility, and the distance and quality of transit. I'm not going to read each of these slides for the categories, but I did want to mention, if you go and you deep dive into the document, you'll see that we look at T5 and T6, the urban general and downtown classifications, and we provide information about the zoning and the density, the intensity, what type of parking structures that you're using, the open space. So you'll see some of this in general terms in the document currently. We are working on more specific recommendations for these things on a quarter by quarter basis. And we're also testing our theory against some of these things in the future. And I'll show you which quarters we're going to do that against in the future. So if you look at the urban form, you'll see the influencing factors and you'll see what the metrics are that we're applying to them. Similarly, for complete streets, we also had those similar key elements that we need to factor in and some of the metrics that we would hope to see and measure along the corridors. So for example, destination accessibility, what are your block dimensions? What do they look like? Obviously that ties into urban form as well. Your crossing locations, are they adequate? Are they suitable? With respect to development constraints in complete streets, there's obvious, shortcomings of the network that need to be filled in terms of first mile and last mile connections. The obstacles and barriers to doing that obviously have to come with right of way, which development can help with, and then conflict areas, meaning high stress points in the network or places where there might be interactions between different uses. And then lastly, for mobility hubs, obviously, as you are closer to the station, as you enter a corridor, and as you're trying to access the transit service, the shorter the distance, the less effort that you have to exert. So if it's in a quarter of a mile, that's a 5-minute walk. Most people will be willing to tolerate that. But as you go further and further, you start to see the concept of needing wheels, needing electrified wheels, maybe getting into a shared mobility device. So that's where we start talking about things like kiss and rides, ride shares, shared parking, ensuring that we have good curbside parking access management as well as a really critical component to mobility hubs. And then also the quality of the transit service. As you go farther, great example of this is Old Faithful, Tri-Rail, you're going longer distances, you want to have a really good quality service. If you're going a shorter distance, a more localized bus service, or maybe a on-demand type service from one of the mobility providers would be a good option. So making transit-oriented communities, transit-oriented corridors, transit-oriented everything, a local reality. We are going to grow substantially. All of you probably know this, you've seen this slide. We're going to grow by 300,000 people by 2050, and our right-of-ways are more or less already maxed out. So without making our roadways go vertical, we're not going to be doing anything, and that is very expensive. Most of the time we see the trade-off between the cost of doing that and the benefit in terms of time savings, and it's marginal. So we have to think differently about how we grow, where we are going to grow. What you see on the map is the absolute change in population density. So if you're looking at persons per square mile into the future, you can see that most of the concentrations are east of 95. We do have some pockets that are going on the fringe of the urban area, as we like to call it. But we do have pretty substantial growth that's going to happen in terms of our density changes into the future. So our congested corridors, guess what? They're not going to get any better. People talk about sustainability and how you're never going to have as good of a weather as you're going to have right now. You can apply that same logic to traffic. It's never going to be as good as it is today. So just take that into consideration. Unless we start moving those dials, unless we start thinking about how we can move the needle. Our affordability is also not gotten, well, I shouldn't say it hasn't gotten better. Our housing cost has come down a little bit according to the Housing and Transportation Index, but we are still 10% over the affordable metric. We're at 55%, when 45% is considered affordable when you combine these two metrics. Just a reminder, these are our core 561 network areas. So you can see that we have obviously a vision for how we address most of the growth and most of the shift in how we look at the transit network through light rail, through bus rapid transit, through BRT light. We have the active ongoing study right now with Okeechobee Boulevard, and then we have a number of other corridors that we're looking at to get to kind of like a bus rapid transit light concept with 15-minute service, which is what Okeechobee is currently operating at. We're seeking a grant from FDOT to get Lake Worth Road at 15-minute service as well as other concepts which address mobility on demand. So working with Palm Trend, we've identified a number of sites that would be eligible for potential mobility on demand service areas. So rather than providing that fixed route bus, we would be providing that micromobility shuttle. I shouldn't call it micromobility, but the mobility on demand shuttles, similar to the Go Glade service. The most recent one we've been discussing is one for the acreage. So rather than having a fixed route passenger service that runs every 15, 30, 60 minutes, probably won't have the highest ridership because the density is low. The streets aren't complete. The first mile, last mile networks aren't there. Having a mobility on demand feeder service that would get you to one of the core 561 network areas, having that feed the transit service and transfer to a more rapid service, as well as expanding upon the express route service. So currently, if you haven't seen or heard, there is an express route that runs currently into Palm Beach County from Port St. Lucie, carries 60 passengers a day. I think it runs four times a day, both during the morning and twice in the morning, twice in the AM, PM peak. So that carries 60 people daily on 95. Expanding those concepts beyond to Belglade, all along 95 to Boca Raton. Those are all projects that we've ingrained in the LRTP and that we'll be using as part of our transit-oriented communities task work order to evaluate these corridors. So in working with our consultants, we identified Lake Worth Road, Boynton Beach Boulevard, and Military Trail as kind of the three corridors that we're going to evaluate and test some of those densities and intensity matrices against, some of those key metrics that we want to see in terms of mobility hubs, parking, all of those things that I mentioned before and those key influencing factors. We're actually looking at the existing land use now. And what we're doing is we've identified the station areas where we would think that most regional service should go. So like a bus rapid transit that has a stop like every mile instead of every 500 to 1,000 feet. So many fewer stops, running much more rapid, and looking at how the national best practices for things like densities and intensities align with the current policies on the ground. So we're trying to see if we're at a place where we can launch this type of service now, or what we need to do on a corridor-wide basis to get us to the right level of density and intensity to move that needle forward. So we're analyzing these three corridors now. We're going to be reaching out to the municipalities in these areas and the county to ensure that what we have is accurate, because we are going to come up with ultimately a table where we see those different types of stations, what they need to get to, seeing which ones, if anything, have to have any changes, because we have gone through a number of these types of analysis for land use already and found that, for the most part, we're pretty good on density and intensity on these corridors already. We're going to feed this information, obviously, to our CTMP team. As Nathan alluded to, we had an original schedule of that being completed in June. It's been given a little bit more time, so we'll see if we can influence this project and get that implementation guidance to them that we're trying to come up with, and those standardized influencing factors and thresholds as part of this effort as well. All this is going to be discussed in very strong detail on AICP submitted for credits workshop, April 30th from 9:30 to 12. We are offering hybrid, but since this is going to be a very hands-on workshop, if you want the best experience, please come in person. So I would strongly encourage you all to please get this on your calendars now. This will be, I believe, on the Friday before our committee workshops in May. So please do make note of that. We're going to have a few speakers coming from around potentially the state. We're going to have Dwayne Carver come back. He presented at our micromobility safety workshop in September. He was the former context classification administrator for the state of Florida at the FDOT. Clarence Ang, who is an FAICP professional who's been working out of Tampa and out of Seattle on their transit-oriented developments for those cities. And then a few other speakers and activities that we're going to be doing as well. So we're really excited about that. We're excited to be wrapping up the strategic plan item after this workshop with your feedback. So please do come hear about what we've been working on and look at this and how it can help your work in implementing a 561. So that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions here.
Thank you, Brian. Staff, any public comments? Assuming none. No. Committee member comments. Alex.
I was curious about the map that you showed with the projected increase in the population density. We can discuss it later on, but I'm very curious about the data and from a planning application standpoint. And
right.
So, but we can discuss it later on, but I'm very curious about.
Yeah, and the reason we look at it in terms of the future density compared to the current density
Understood.
is because, you can say, well, we're going to have, a 3,000% increase in this this transportation analysis zone, which could make up a very, one neighborhood, for example. That 3,000 person increase makes up, a couple of square miles, whereas the same 3,000 person increase would be happening in a downtown, which has a 1 block, change. So that's why we look at this from a absolute change in density into the future as part of this exercise, rather than showing like a heat map with percent change or otherwise. So
and conceptually, I don't disagree. I'm curious about the method, how you obtain the data, because actually even for us, West Palm Beach,
Right.
for us to apply some of the same data in other types of analysis.
we can share it. It's all from our socioeconomic data for the LRTP. We just take the extra step of measuring it against density and the current form. So we can share that with you if you'd like.
Any other comments from committee members?
All right.
I think we got a lot of mobility discussion out in the last session.
Please do.
I'm sorry, I didn't. pick
Yes,
my-
Kim.
My card up, but what I would say is kudos to the MPO, because we get outcompeted by regions and counties across the state and nation for transit investment. And one of the pieces that's been missing is the data and the actions to show that we're more transit ready than frankly we are in many ways, and that the data shows. So, tremendous compliments to the MPO, because it's really like, the term I saw was like aggressive optimism. I'm using the wrong phrase, but there's a way to kind of really position yourself to be more competitive, and it takes this kind of investment in believing in the future, a different future, to be able to bring federal dollars home. We are on the map, like in many ways, for federal investment. So this is a great, I think it's a great way to leverage the MPO's knowledge and resources to get us more positioned to have a more equitable investment and a more balanced outcome. So great job.
Right. Any other committee member comments? I just have similar comments to the last agenda item where, coordination is key, working with all the affected jurisdictions, Palm Beach County, since it sounds like they have the jurisdiction on the roadways that you identified, any mobility plans, if there is opportunity to share the emerging data as part of the countywide plan. It's all good stuff that you're talking about. I'm particularly excited about Military Trail. I know we've discussed that in the past. I think there's tremendous opportunity for rapid bus transit along that corridor. And I know that when we were looking at some of our traffic counts along some of the segments in Gardens, you do have certain stretches that are, potentially a candidate, depending on additional infrastructure coming online, for a conversion of a lane to be able to have a dedicated area. So all of those things, part of the discussion, very exciting, very complementary to many of the efforts going on as part of many of the planning efforts, and great work. Looking forward to seeing the outcome and the workshop.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you all there. Please get registered and check out the study framework before. It's a very preliminary document that just kind of lays the foundation. This year's effort is going to get into a lot of specifics and nitty gritty about how we get to realizing the 561 network and what it's going to take on a community level to get to the station areas right, to get the corridors right, so on and so forth.
Lorraine's got her card up, sorry. Yeah.
This? Actually, no, that's on the top of the building. It's a mural what we have. There's 2 sides to it. No, there's 2 sides. This is the side facing southbound. So if you walk northbound, you'll see one that looks like a Siemens locomotive, which matches the Brightline, Amtrak, and others. But on the other side, there's a bus with the airport and others. So it's a little hard to see because the trees on the streets, which we love, and we're not going to have that ever change. But if you're in like one of the downtown buildings, you can see it really well. Yeah. Yeah, there's a side with the train which gets the most attention. This one is are more representative. Yep.
Thank you, Lorraine. All right, so that is it for informational items. We are on to just administrative items. Are there any committee member comments on items 4A through C? All right, seeing none. Our next advisory committee meeting is scheduled for May 6th. And at this time, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.